The morning HOA President Cheryl Bishop had 4,000 of my pines cut down for a lake view. She was smiling. 41 acres of my uncle's timber went down the mountain on log trucks, and the board sold it for $1.2 million. What Cheryl never checked was still standing in that clearing, 4,000 times, cut off 2 feet above the ground. By spring, every one of their 142 homes owed $17,000. Let me take you back to where it started. My name is Sam Trask. Until last June, I was a diesel mechanic in Reno with a truck that needed a clutch. Then, my uncle Merritt Vance died in March at 89, and in June a lawyer in Bellwood, Oregon, handed me a banker's box and a ring of keys. 900 acres, the lawyer said. Ponderosa pine and larch, north shoulder of Kestrel Ridge. He bought it in 1962, and he never sold a stick of it. Why me? Because he had no children, he said, and your mother was his little sister. That's the entire list, Mr. Trask. The cabin is 1 room and a wood stove, half a mile of gravel above the county road. In the shed, Merritt's tools hung on nails in the order he used them, a double-bit axe on the end nail with the handle worn shiny. On the bench sat a flat tobacco tin with a rubber band around it. Inside was a brass compass, a stub pencil, and a folded feed store envelope with pencil lines on it. I looked at it 8 seconds, snapped the band back on, and dropped it in my glove box with the fuses and the tire gauge. My closest neighbor is Ott Pruitt, 78, who felled timber 40 years and has the fingers to prove it. He came up my second week with his granddaughter Junie, 12. "You'll be Sam," Ott said. "Yes, sir. Merritt mentioned you twice in 30 years, so you're probably all right." He looked past me at the shed. "You going to log it or sit on it?" "I don't know yet." "Sit on it a year," Ott said. "The ground isn't going anywhere." We walked the old skid road down toward the shoulder that opens toward the lake. Junie stopped at a big pine, 4 feet through at the butt. "What's that?" Junie said. She was pointing at a fat-heeled scar on the trunk, chest high, grown over into a lip of bark like a closed eye. "Old scratch," I said. "Somebody cut that on purpose." "Probably. Why would a person cut a tree on purpose and then leave it standing?" "Junie," Ott said, "I'm only asking." "I know exactly what you're doing," Ott said, and we walked on down the hill. Past my south line there's a gate with a code pad and 142 houses called Blue Heron Ridge on the west shore of Kestrel Lake. I met Cheryl Bishop on the 3rd of July at the mailboxes on the county road. Bright red blazer, 90 degrees out, not a hair moving on her. "You'd be Merritt's nephew," Cheryl said. "Sam." "Cheryl Bishop. I chair the association." She looked past me, up the ridge, the way you look at a wall you're planning to paint. "We're finally opening the view corridor this summer." "The what?" "The view corridor. 30 years those trees have stood in front of every house on the east row." "Whose trees?" "Ours," Cheryl said. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Trask." She smiled and drove off, and I stood there thinking she meant their own trees, on their own side of the line. That's the part I'd like back. That first week of August, I spent 5 days in Reno, hauling the last of my tools north. I got home Sunday at midnight. At 6:40 Monday morning, I woke up to a sound that has no business on a ridge at that hour. A saw. Then 2 of them. Then 3. I pulled on boots and drove down the skid road with the window open, because sound tells you more than eyes do in timber. At the bottom of the grade, the road came out into daylight where there had never been daylight before. 41 acres of my uncle's pine was lying on the ground. Not thinned, not salvaged. Flat. Trunks stacked in decks, limbs in windrows, stumps standing 2 feet high in rows up the slope like a bad haircut. A yellow processor was stripping a trunk in 3 seconds. 3 fallers worked the far edge, and a loader built a deck by the road. They'd started the Thursday before, while I was in Nevada. 4 days. Better than 3,000 trees were already down of the 4,000 in the final count. I put the truck across the road and got out with my hands up and open, because that's how you walk toward a running saw. The foreman came at me fast, waving both arms. Orange hard hat, red beard going gray, chaps over his jeans. Dewey Farrow, out of Bellwood. "You can't be in here," Dewey said. "This is an active unit." "It's my unit." He stopped walking. "Say again?" "This is the Vance tract. I own it. 8 weeks now." Dewey looked at me a second, then drew a flat hand across his throat at the machines, and one by one the saws quit. In timber, that's the loudest thing that can happen. Everything stops and you can hear a bird again, and it isn't good. "Mister, I've got a signed contract," Dewey said. He came back from his crew truck with a clipboard in a plastic sleeve. "I've got a notification filed with the state. Landowner of record, Blue Heron Ridge Homeowners Association. Their president signed the landowner certification herself. Then your landowner signed a lie. I've been logging 30 years. I don't cut what I can't paper. Did you walk that line?" He pulled his hard hat off and wiped his forehead with his wrist. "I asked them about that line twice," Dewey said. "Twice. Second time, the lady told me she'd been on that board 11 years and I ought to stick to sawing." "What did you say to that?" "I said yes, ma'am," Dewey said. "That's the part I get to live with." He got on his phone. I stood in the middle of my own clearcut and looked at it. What you feel first isn't rage. It's more like being lied to by the ground itself. 11 days before, I'd walked that shoulder after dark with a flashlight, and it was a forest. 20 minutes later, a white association truck came down the skid road, and Cheryl Bishop stepped out of it in a bright red blazer and white trousers into a clear-cut in August. Her son-in-law came with her. Kurt Dressler, 35, community standards officer, navy polo, radio on his belt, phone already up and filming me. "Mr. Trask," Cheryl said, "you've stopped our crew. They're cutting my timber. They're clearing our green belt." She opened that brown leather folio and turned it around so I could see the 1979 subdivision plat. A long shaded strip across the top with one word printed inside. Greenbelt. "That has been on the recorded plat since before you were born. The county approved it. That strip is inside my deed. I'll go get the deed right now." "I'm sure you have a deed. Everyone has a deed." "Then walk down there with me, and let's find the corner." "I'm not walking anywhere in these shoes," Cheryl said. "It blocked our view, Mr. Trask. 30 years it blocked our view, and this board finally did something about it." Kurt kept the phone on my face. Cheryl closed the folio and looked out at the loader the way a woman looks at a kitchen remodel going well. "Dewey, you can start back up," she said. "Mr. Trask is welcome to take it up with the board. Here's my mistake, and I've never once talked myself out of it. I didn't call the state that morning. I didn't call the sheriff and stand on that road until somebody with a badge came up it. I drove 40 miles to Bellwood to find a lawyer, because I thought this was a paper problem, and paper problems get fixed in offices. By 1 o'clock, the saws were running again. The board met the 3rd Monday of the month, and on the 18th of August, I walked into that clubhouse with a manila folder and 60 neighbors staring at the back of my head. One thing in it. A certified copy of the 1962 warranty deed, 900 acres, Merritt Vance, recorded in Ellery County. Cheryl ran the meeting off a printed agenda. Item 4 was called Phase 1. "The view corridor is complete," Cheryl said. "The salvage brought in more than the committee projected, and every dollar of it goes into the clubhouse fund." The room clapped. Somebody in the third row whistled. I got 3 minutes at homeowner comment and held the deed over my head so the back rows could see the recorder's stamp. 41 acres, I said. 4,000 trees. It's all inside this deed and I've had it 8 weeks. I'm asking this board to stop the operation and get a surveyor out there tomorrow. Mr. Trask, the operation is finished. Then get a surveyor out there anyway. There's a particular silence a room makes when it wants a thing to be true. It isn't hostile, it's patient, which is worse. Their attorney was on a speakerphone from Bellwood. The association relied in good faith on a recorded plat approved by the county in 1979, he said. We're comfortable with our position. Comfortable, I said. Nobody has questioned that greenbelt in 30 years, Cheryl said. Not once, not one time. You've owned that hill for 8 weeks. That's true. I've owned it 8 weeks. How long do I have to own it before you'll walk down there with a tape? Item 5, Cheryl said. Enforcement. Kurt Dressler read it out. On the 12th of August, I'd run a chain between 2 posts across the top of the skid road and hung a metal sign on it. My road, my posts. The board fined me $250 a day for obstruction of association access, plus $500 for an unapproved structure, meaning the chain. The room laughed. Not all of it. Enough of it. You're fining me, I said, for locking my own gate on my own road after you cut down my forest. We're fining you for blocking a work area. There's no work. You said the operation's finished. For blocking access, Cheryl said. Then she slid a folded paper down the table toward me and used a warm voice, the voice you'd use with a child. The board is also prepared to offer you $9,000 as a courtesy, cleanup costs, no admission of anything. I looked at it. $9,000. Ma'am, you sold my trees for more than $1 million. That number isn't public, Cheryl said, quick, and for 1 second the whole room heard it. Then she smiled and gathered the smile back up. Take the $9,000, Mr. Trask. Litigation is expensive, and you're a man living in a cabin. I'll keep the trees, I said. You keep the $9,000. There are no trees. I know it, I said, and I left the paper on the table and walked out. And Kurt Dressler followed 6 feet behind me the whole way with his phone up. Out in the parking lot, a woman in a lavender cardigan stood by the recycling bins, looking like she wanted to say something and had twice decided not to. Long meeting, she said. Yes, ma'am. She got in her car. I got in my truck. I sat there in the dark a long time. What I felt wasn't a plan. It was the flat, tired understanding that I'd walked in with the only paper that mattered, and it hadn't mattered. The certified letters started that week, all in the same envelope with the association's heron printed in the corner. By the 25th of August, the running total was $1,750, and it went up $250 every morning while I slept. Then Dewey Farrow called me. I'm not supposed to be talking to you, Dewey said. Then don't. Scale came back from the mill Friday. He waited. 2.4 million board feet. I sat down on the step. Say that again. 2.4 million, Dewey said. Off 41 acres. That was good ground, mister. Best pine I've put on a truck in 9 years. What did they get for it? That's between them and the mill. Then he said, You want my scale tickets? They're not privileged. They're mine. He mailed me every ticket off that job, and I read them at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold. The mill cut the association a check for $1,240,000. I called that mill on a Tuesday and got a log buyer who was polite about every bit of it. Those logs came in the second week of August, he said. Bucked, sawed, stickered. Half of it's out of the kiln by now. So there's nothing left to look at. "Sir, there's a house going up in Fresno with your uncle's trees in the roof of it," he said. "That's not a thing anybody gets back." On the 1st of September, the newsletter went to all 142 homes, and somebody slid a copy under my wiper blade, which I've always assumed was kindness. Phase 1, complete. A color rendering of the new clubhouse. Lakeview Commons. Timber frame beams, a wall of glass facing the water, a bronze donor plaque by the fireplace. First name on the plaque was Cheryl Bishop. Ott came up that evening and read the newsletter twice on my step without a word. "You know what that woman does for a living?" Ott said. "No. She sells houses. 11 of them in there are hers right now." He folded the newsletter into quarters. "Hers is on the market too, Sam. $1,340,000. Lakeview." "There's no Lakeview from her house." "There is now," Ott said. "I want to be fair to Cheryl Bishop, so I'll say it plainly. I don't think she woke up wanting to hurt me. She looked at a shaded strip on a plat. She looked at 11 listings, and she decided the question wasn't worth asking out loud. That's the whole thing. That's the whole crime, right there. I called the state forestry office in Bellwood twice that week. The woman there was decent about it. "The notification is a self-certification," she said. "The state takes the filer's word that they own the ground. So, anybody can sign it. Anybody can sign it. It's against the law to sign it falsely. Then somebody broke the law. Then you'll want to file a complaint with proof of ownership and a survey," she said. "Do you have a survey?" "I've got a deed from 1962. "A deed and a survey are two different animals," she said. And she wasn't wrong about that either. On the 8th of September, the fines hit $5,250, and their attorney sent a letter saying a lien would be recorded against my property if the balance wasn't cured. Against my property. For a chain on my own road. The last letter that week was the ultimatum. 10 days to remove the obstruction. After that, the association would remove it, restore access to the greenbelt, and bill me for the work. I read that one twice at the mailbox, with a log truck going by behind me. Empty, headed up for another load off somebody else's ground. 10 days. They didn't take 10 days. Friday, the 5th of September, I drove to Bellwood to pull plats, then stopped at the hardware store for chain and a padlock. The woman in the lavender cardigan was at the register buying furnace filters. Margie Salas, 22 years the recording secretary of Blue Heron Ridge, retired in 2011. "I owe you an apology," Margie said. "You don't owe me a thing, ma'am." "I sat in that room and didn't open my mouth. They laughed at you." She frowned down at the filters. "That association wasn't like that once. We had a board that read things. They read a plat. They read one line on a plat," Margie said. "We talked about nothing for 4 minutes. Her husband's knee, the smoke coming up from the south end of the county. You'd think an outfit that size would want its own history," she said. "When they moved the office out of the old clubhouse in 2011, I took 11 boxes of files home so they wouldn't go in a dumpster. Minutes, correspondence back to the 70s. Nobody's come for them." "Not one person in 14 years, Margie said. "They're sitting on my husband's side of the garage under a tarp, and he would dearly love to have it back." "I'd imagine so," I said. "That's all." I bought my chain and drove home. I never got to hang it. The chain I already had was lying cut in 2 pieces at the top of the skid road. Both posts pushed flat. Fresh dozer tracks up over my grade, and 40 feet of my hillside bladed out into a turnaround. The topsoil shoved into a berm against the trees. Down below, they were falling the last 8 acres. Kurt Dressler stood at the top of it in his navy polo, filming on a phone clamped to a tripod, with a printed sign zip-tied to a stake. Association Access Restoration in Progress. You cut my gate, I said. The board authorized restoration of access, Kurt said. It's in the minutes. Those are my posts. That's my dirt under your dozer. Sir, I'd step back from the equipment. Kurt, look at me a second. I pointed down the hill. Have you ever one time walked down there with a tape and checked where that line is? That's not my job. Whose job is it? You'll get an invoice for the gate removal, Kurt said, and he actually smiled about it. $400. That's cheaper than what they charged us. I stood on that turnaround for maybe 90 seconds with my hands hanging at my sides, and there was a shovel in the bed of my truck 12 feet away. I didn't touch it. Not that day, not any day, not once in 11 months. I walked back up to my own ground and started taking pictures. The cut chain, the flattened posts, the dozer tracks, the berm, the stake with the sign on it, and a timestamp on every one. Then I walked the whole edge of the cut and shot the stumps. 291 photographs that afternoon from my own dirt. They finished the last 8 acres by Tuesday. On the 12th of September, they lit the slash. 6 piles at once, and the smoke came up the draw and sat on my cabin 2 days, and everything I owned smelled like a campfire. Ott called that night. You smell that? He said. I'm sitting in it. That's 100 years of growing, Ott said, going up in an afternoon so a real estate lady can see the water. On paper, that night, I was the trespasser. I was the one with the lien coming, the unapproved structure, the $400 invoice. That's what they had. Paper. I had 291 photographs of a crime nobody would call a crime. The 19th of September was the worst day of my life, and nothing happened on it. That's how those days go. It started at the county planning counter. I asked a clerk to show me how the assessor's office had that strip mapped. She turned her monitor around, and there it was. 41 acres of my deed, shaded green and labeled association open space, the same in every version since 1979. That's not title, she said. That's just how it's drawn. Does anybody around here know that? She thought about it honestly, which I appreciated. No, she said. Nobody knows that. From there, I drove to the biggest law firm in the county seat. A partner gave me 50 minutes and a legal pad, and every word out of him was true. $40,000 retainer to start, he said. Resurvey, title examination, 2 experts, and a trial. You're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 before we're done. How long? 2 years, 3 if they appeal, and they'll appeal. And then I win. And then their lawyer stands up and tells a jury that everybody in that county has treated that strip as association ground for 46 years, he said. Juries do strange things with 46 years, Mr. Trask. How much cash can you put up this month? I had $11,000 and a truck. Back at the ridge, there was a message from the log buyer at Ledbetter Mill. My uncle had signed a thinning contract in January, 300 acres on the east side, nothing to do with the disputed ground. That contract was my whole first year of money, $180,000. I'm canceling it, he said. I hate it, but I'm canceling it. That's the east side. That's 4 miles from them. You've got a lien recorded and a live title dispute on the whole tract, he said. My company doesn't buy off a tract like that. Get it clean and call me. Clean. That word rode up the grade with me, because there was nothing dirty on that mountain except what they'd done to it. 4 days later, they recorded the lien. $8,750, attached to 900 acres my family had held since 1962. So, let me lay out where I was on the 23rd of September. I'd lost 4,000 trees and $180,000 of work that had nothing to do with them. I had a lien on my land, a fine growing $250 every sunrise, an invoice for the destruction of my own gate, and a legal road that cost more than everything I owned. The association had a check for $1,240,000 and a bronze plaque on order. That week, I pulled a box out of the shed and started putting my Reno tools back in it. I got as far as the sockets. I want you to tell me in the comments what you'd have done that week. Not what you'd say at a bar, what you'd actually have done with $11,000 and a lien, because I was finished. I had decided. Then, Thursday evening, Ott came up the gravel in his old flatbed with a thermos and sat down on my step, and he didn't ask how I was, which was the kindest thing anybody did for me that month. We sat a while. He looked down the draw at the burned slash. "You remember that scar Junie found," Ott said, "on the big pine." "Sure. There's 60 of them down that line." "60 what?" "60 scars on 60 trees, in a straight row from the county road to the far corner." He poured coffee into the thermos cup and handed it over without looking at me. "Your uncle cut every one of them himself in the summer of 1962, with a county surveyor named Ferris Cole running the chain." I turned and looked at him. "How would you know a thing like that?" "Because I was 14 years old," Ott said, "and I carried the axe box." Here's what Ott told me on that step, and at the time it did not sound like the answer to anything. "Cole ran the outside line with a steel chain," Ott said. "Every time that line crossed a tree big enough to matter, Merritt hit it twice with a double bit and cut a blaze into the wood, chest high, facing up the line. 60 of them, road to corner." "Why blaze it at all if you've got a survey?" "Because paper burns and a courthouse can flood," Ott said. "A blaze walks around on its own legs for 100 years. Ott, they cut down every one of those trees." He drank his coffee and looked down the draw a while. "They cut down the trees," he said. "They didn't take the stumps." I didn't sleep that night, and for once it wasn't grief. Saturday morning, I opened the glove box, moved the fuses and the tire gauge, and there it was, the flat tobacco tin where I'd dropped it in June. Brass compass, stub pencil, and a feed store envelope folded into 8, soft as cloth, with a line drawn on it in my uncle's pencil and figures along it. Bearings, distances and chains. In the corner, in block letters, 60 blazes, pipe to pipe. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open and read a dead man's handwriting for 10 minutes. Then I got the compass out and walked it. That map put the line straight through the middle of what was now a field of stumps. I walked it with a can of orange paint, and by dark I'd marked 41 stumps standing exactly where my uncle's pencil said a blazed tree ought to be. On the 1st of October, a consulting forester named Neil Okada drove up my grade with a small chainsaw in a case. He's a quiet man in wire-rimmed glasses who has spent 30 years telling people things about trees they don't want to hear. He listened to the whole story without one question, which made me nervous. "Do you know what a blaze does to a tree?" Okada said. "Scars it. It gets buried, the tree grows callous wood over the wound and closes it, and after 10 years there's nothing to see from outside but a lip in the bark." He set his case down. "But the scar is still in there. It's sealed inside the wood like a fly in amber, and every ring that tree laid down afterward is stacked on top of it. Sealed inside how deep? 2 inches, 3. He crouched at the first stump I'd painted and put his hand flat on the sawn face. "Which means, if I cut a wedge out of this stump and the scar is in it, I can count the rings laid over the top and tell you the year the axe went in." "The decade, you mean?" "The year, Mr. Trask," Okada said. Trees keep better records than counties do. He cut 9 wedges out of 9 stumps over 2 days. Everyone had a blaze scar sealed in the wood. Everyone dated to the growing season of 1962. On the 6th of October, a licensed surveyor named Ruth Beltran found the first iron pipe in 20 minutes, standing in the ditch at the county road. The second took most of a day, because a cedar had come down over it, and her detector found it under 11 inches of duff. She ran the line pipe to pipe with a survey-grade receiver, then walked my painted stumps. "Well?" I said. "Your stumps are on it," Ruth said. "Number 4 is within 4 inches of the line. Whoever set these knew exactly what he was doing." "How far inside my ground did they cut?" "All of it," she said. "The entire unit. 41 acres, and not one tree of it was theirs." I stood on my own dirt in the middle of that clearing, and for the first time since the 11th of August I laughed out loud. They had cut down every witness I had, and then they'd left 4,000 of them standing 2 feet high with the date written inside. Del Mabry has an office over a feed store in Bellwood with a window unit that rattles. He's 58, and he does timber and land and nothing else. He looked at Okada's wedges a long time under a desk lamp, then at Ruth Beltran's plat, then set his reading glasses on the desk. "You know what timber trespass is worth in this state?" Del said. "No." "3 times the value of the timber." I sat there. "3 times, Del said. "That's not something a judge hands you if he likes your face. That's the statute. A man cuts your trees without the right to, he pays triple. They sold it for $1,240,000. "I can count," Del said. Then he leaned back and told me the part that cost me 2 weeks of sleep. "There's a door out of it for them. If the cutter had probable cause to believe the ground was his, it drops to single damages. Honest mistake, honest price." He tapped the plat. "And they've got a piece of paper from 1979 with the word Greenbelt printed on it. That is a comfortable door, Sam, and their lawyer will walk through it holding it open for the whole board. So, what's the difference in money?" "The difference is about $2.5 million, Del said. "How do I shut the door?" "You show me one thing. Show me somebody in that association knew and cut anyway. 1 letter, 1 line of minutes, 1 person who was told. And if there isn't one, then you're a man who won a case and lost a mountain," Del said. On the 17th of October, a state forestry officer named Dana Whitcomb looked at Ruth's stakes in my deed and wrote up the association for filing a false landowner certification. Stop work order, civil penalty. She cleared Dewey Farrow entirely, and she was right to. "Ma'am," I said, "is this the part where somebody gets in trouble?" "This is the part where somebody gets a fine and a letter," Whitcomb said. "The trouble is your side of it." 6 days later, I drove to Margie Salas's house with a box of donuts and a flashlight. 11 boxes, exactly like she said, under a tarp with a bag of lawn fertilizer on top. Minutes, correspondence, and treasurer's reports back to 1977. "What am I looking for?" Margie said. "Anybody who ever asked a question about that strip." "Then start at the front," she said. "People asked better questions in the 70s. It took 4 hours. Margie files things properly, and the year I wanted was in Box 7. September 1988. A 2-page letter to the board from Harold Renz, the surveyor who drew their plat in the first place. He wrote it after a homeowner asked him a question at a picnic. The strip shaded on sheet 2 as Greenbelt, Renz wrote, was a drafting convenience showing a scenic buffer. The company had never acquired it. Title lay in the Vance tract and always had. He recommended the board approach Mr. Vance about an easement before anyone spent money up there. Stapled behind the letter were the minutes of the September 1988 board meeting. Motion by Director Ward Bishop, that the association take no action on the Wren's letter and make no inquiry of the Vance family. Seconded, carried 5-0. Margie sat down slowly on an upturned bucket. "Oh," she said. "Oh, that's bad. Ward Bishop. Any relation?" "Cheryl's father-in-law," Margie said. "She and Gerald bought that house out of Ward's estate in '96. "Margie, do you know what you've had in your garage for 14 years? "I do now," she said. "Take the whole box. Take 2. On the 28th of October, Del Mabry filed. Timber trespass, treble damages, plus a motion the court granted that same week freezing what was left of the association's timber money right where it sat. Then we went quiet. 3 weeks, not a word, not a call, nothing to the newspaper. I paid my fine balance in full, in cash, with a receipt, and I hung a new chain. Because the last thing you do when you finally have the truth in your hand is tell the other fellow you have it. The groundbreaking was Friday the 14th of November, 5 o'clock, on the lawn in front of the old clubhouse. I wasn't invited. I went because Del Mabry told me to. "Stand at the back," Del said. "Hands in your pockets. Do not say one word to that woman, not if she puts a microphone in your face. Can you do that?" "Why am I going at all?" "Because she's ducked our process server twice in 2 weeks," Del said. "And on Friday at 5 o'clock we know exactly where she's going to be standing." "And if she says something to me?" "Then you say nothing back, and every person on that lawn watches her do it." They had it done up nice. String lights, propane heaters, a coffee urn and a sheet cake, a rendering board on an easel, and 5 new shovels with the blades spray-painted gold stuck in a mound of trucked-in dirt. About 120 people. Kurt Dressler worked the crowd with his phone up. A man in a canvas coat drifted over by the heater. "You're the fellow from up the hill," he said. "I am." "My wife says they cut your trees." "They did." "Well," he said, "I hope that gets sorted." Then he moved off, and I've never held it against him. Cheryl took the microphone at 10 after 5 in a bright red blazer, and I'll give the woman her due. She was good at it. She thanked the committee by name, thanked the landscape volunteers, and got a real laugh out of a story about a permit. 11 years ago, somebody told me this was impossible, Cheryl said, and tonight we break ground on it, fully funded, with no assessment on any homeowner, not $1 out of your pocket. They clapped a long time. I stood at the back with my hands in my pockets, and then she found me in the crowd. I'll never know why. She looked right at me over 120 heads and her voice got warm and amused. "We even have our neighbor from up the hill with us tonight," Cheryl said. "Sam, would you like to say a few words about our green belt?" People turned around. Somebody laughed the way people laugh when they've been told it's allowed. I didn't say anything. Hands in pockets. "No?" Cheryl said. "Then I'd suggest you sue us, Mr. Trask. The plat says Greenbelt." That got the biggest laugh of the night. She raised her cup an inch like a toast and turned back to the shovels. And then Sheriff Ed Kinnard walked onto that lawn. He wasn't hurrying. Silver crew cut, khaki uniform, brown campaign hat, a plain manila envelope in his left hand. A county sheriff crossing a lawn at a party does something to a crowd that no amount of shouting can do. The talking went out of it in 4 seconds, front to back, like a wave running the wrong way. "Evening, folks," Kinnard said. "Mrs. Bishop." "Sheriff." Cheryl still had the microphone on. Everybody heard all of it. "Ma'am, I've got civil papers for you and for the association." He held the envelope out. "I'd just as soon do this inside, if you'd like. There is nothing in that envelope that can't be said in front of my neighbors." "Yes, ma'am," Kinnard said. I want to be clear that she said that. Nobody made her say that. She opened it right there on the lawn with the microphone in her other hand and 120 people watching. Summons and complaint. Timber trespass, the court's order freezing what was left of the timber money, and the state forestry notice, the stop work, and the civil penalty for the false landowner certification she had signed with her own hand in July. She got halfway down the second page. Her chin came up, which was the tell, and it never came back down. "This is a stunt," Cheryl said into a live microphone. "That's not for me to say, ma'am," Sheriff Kinnard said. He touched the brim of his hat. "Y'all have a good evening." He walked back to his patrol truck and drove out. Nobody picked up a shovel. It's still the best detail of the whole night. 5 gold shovels standing in a pile of trucked-in dirt, and not one person in that association would go near them. Trial ran the 9th, 10th, and 11th of March in the circuit courtroom in Bellwood, in front of Judge Lauren Pace. 40-some homeowners sat in that gallery. Margie Salas sat in the second row. Ott Pruitt wore a tie. Ruth Beltran went first. She put up the 1962 plat and a photograph of an iron pipe in a ditch beside the county road with a survey rod against it. "I recovered both original corner monuments," Ruth said. "The line between them is where the deed says it is, within 0.02 of a foot." "Could a recorded subdivision plat move that line?" their lawyer asked her. "No, sir. You're certain of that?" "A plat shows what somebody drew," Ruth said. "A deed says what somebody owns. They have never been the same document." Then Neil Okada took the stand on Tuesday morning, and that's when the room changed. They set up a screen. Okada put up a photograph of a stump 31 inches across, painted with an orange 7. Then the wedge he'd cut out of it, polished on the face, blown up until it filled the screen. You could see it from the back row. A dark, closed, boat-shaped scar buried 3 inches inside the wood, and rings stacked over the top of it, ring after ring after ring. "What are we looking at?" Del Mabry asked him. "An axe wound," Okada said. "Made in the outer wood of a living tree. The tree healed over it and buried it. It's called a blaze, and people have marked boundaries this way in this country for 300 years. Can you date it?" "To the year." "Explain that to the court." "Every ring outside that scar is one growing season," Okada said. 63 of them. I counted 9 separate stumps, twice each, and had a second forester count them blind. Every one of these blazes was cut in the summer of 1962. Their lawyer worked on him for 50 minutes. "Could a bear make that mark?" "No, sir." "Lightning?" "No, sir." "Why not, Mr. Okada?" "Because a bear doesn't make 60 wounds in a straight line, chest high, all facing the same direction, all in the same summer," Okada said. "Neither does lightning. Nothing does that but a man with an axe and a reason." The gallery made a sound at that. Judge Pace looked out at them once and they stopped. Then Dell put the 1988 file in evidence and read the letter out loud in a slow, flat voice. And I watched the back of Cheryl Bishop's head. Harold Renz, the man who drew their plat, writing to their board. The greenbelt shading is a drafting convenience. The company never acquired that ground. Title lies in the Vance tract, and always has. Then Dell turned the page to the minutes. "Motion by Director Ward Bishop," he read, "that the association take no action on the Renz letter and make no inquiry of the Vance family. Seconded, carried 5-0. He set the paper down. "Your Honor, this association has had the answer in its own filing cabinet for 37 years. It voted not to ask the question." Cheryl took the stand that afternoon, and her own deposition came back at her line by line. "You testified that nobody had ever questioned that greenbelt." "Nobody ever did." Mrs. Bishop, the association's own surveyor, questioned it in writing. and your husband's father moved that the board not look into it. I never saw that letter. I believe you, Dell said. It was in your files, not your hands. Now tell the court why those trees came down. She could have said 100 things. She said the true one. It blocked our view, Cheryl said. Judge Pace ruled from the bench on Wednesday afternoon. 19 minutes, and he never raised his voice once. The deed line was the boundary. The plat conveyed nothing, because a developer cannot draw title to ground he never bought. 41 acres and 4,000 trees were cut from the plaintiff's land without any right whatsoever. And then he took away their door. The statute permits single damages where a cutter had probable cause to believe the land was his, Judge Pace said. An association that holds a letter from its own surveyor and a recorded vote to make no inquiry does not get to call that an honest mistake. This cutting was willful. Value of the timber, from the mill's own scale tickets and the state's price data, $1,208,000. Trebled, $3,624,000. Plus a $240,000 bond posted with the court for replanting and restoration, plus $147,000 in survey costs and expert fees, $906 a tree, 4,000 times. There was no shouting in that room, just paper moving and a chair scraping in the back. Then a woman 3 rows behind me said it out loud, to nobody, in the voice of a person who has just understood the shape of her own life. Wait, who pays that? Judge Pace was already standing up. The association, ma'am, he said. Here's what 4,000 trees cost Blue Heron Ridge, line by line. The judgment, $3,624,000. The replanting bond, $240,000. Costs, survey and expert fees, $147,000. $4,011,000 total. On the 24th of March, their insurance carrier denied coverage. The policy excludes intentional acts, and a judge had just used the word willful. They had also let an encroachment endorsement lapse in 2019 to save $1,100 a year. The reserve fund had $412,000 in it, saved over 19 years for a roof. Gone. On the 6th of April, the whole board resigned in the room where they'd laughed at me, and a retired schoolteacher named Alma Reyes stood up as interim president. $17,250, Alma read out, per home. All 142, 3 installments and a lien on any house that doesn't pay. Somebody in the back said, "That's not our fault." "No," Alma said, "it's our bill. Every one of them. The widow on the back street who never voted, the young couple in the smallest house on the hill, and the 11 Lakeview houses which were Cheryl's listings. I felt bad about that for about 4 of them. I knocked on the widow's door. "You can pay me out of escrow whenever you sell," I told her. "No interest, no hurry." "Why would you do that?" "Because you didn't vote for it, ma'am." She cried, and I stood on her porch feeling like a man holding a match somebody else struck. On the 4th of May, the sheriff sold their clubhouse. The building and 6 acres of lawn and lake frontage, on the courthouse steps, 11 bidders, done in 9 minutes. A judgment creditor is allowed to bid his own judgment. "How are you paying, Mr. Trask?" the deputy asked me. "With their paper," I said. $1,150,000, credited against what they already owed me. I never wrote a check. 2 weeks later, the 3 directors who signed that contract settled personally at $75,000 apiece, because their own policy denied them too. That came back to the members as a credit of $1,585 a house, with a letter naming which 3 people it came from. Kurt Dressler's job was cut in the same meeting as the landscaping budget. Cheryl Bishop's house sat on the market April to June, listed at $1,340,000. It sold on the 15th of June for $1,020,000, because a buyer looks at a $17,000 assessment and does the math out loud. Nobody in Blue Heron Ridge lost a day of water, heat, or road. What they lost was money and a building, which is exactly what they took from me. Here's the part I still can't say right. The state has a stewardship program for restoring cut ground. They approved $85,000 for the north shoulder of Kestrel Ridge, and with the bond money that put 22,000 seedlings on those 41 acres. The building that was going to be Lakeview Commons is a forestry learning center now. Aunt Pruitt teaches the saw safety hour and won't let a kid within 10 feet of a saw until they've heard all of it. "You're 79, I told him the first week. "Then I'd better hurry," Aunt said. The sign out front says the Merritt Vance Forestry Center. The trail behind it is open to the whole county, 7 days a week, no gate code. We planted the first week of April. 41 acres, 22,000 seedlings, 11 days, and a crew that included 9 people from Blue Heron Ridge who showed up on their own. Junie Pruitt put the first one in the ground. Ott ran the crew at 79 and hollered at all of us about spacing. 10 feet, he kept saying. 10 feet, not 8. You're planting for a man you'll never meet. When it was done, I took my uncle's double-bit axe off the end nail, and Junie and I walked the line pipe to pipe and marked it again. Not the seedlings, the big pines on the far side that nobody ever touched. 2 hits each, chest high, facing up the line. "How long do these last?" Junie asked me. "Longer than the paperwork." "That's not an answer." 100 years, I said, maybe more. "Will they still know it was you?" "They'll know somebody stood right here and meant it," I said. "That's the whole idea." Here's what that year taught me, and then I'll let you go. A line you can't see is still a line, and the ground remembers what people vote to forget. All this ever needed was for somebody to ask the question out loud before the saws started. That question was free. Not asking it cost 142 families $17,250 apiece. The compass went back in the tin, the rubber band went back around it, and the tin went back in the glove box with the fuses and the tire gauge, because that's where Merritt kept it, and he was right about most things. If you'd have picked up that shovel on the 5th of September, tell me in the comments. And if you want to know what happened the next time an association came up my road looking for a view, subscribe and stick around, because that one's better.